By now, Hitler and the Nazi Party inner circle, being fixated on mythology, obscure occult stuff, classical art, and religious arcana, is a lot more well-known than it was in the immediate post-war period. But while facts like Hitler being a middling artist and a failed art student have been joke fodder for years,
he could paint an entire apartment in one afternoon, 2 coats!
A lot of time the reporting on this tends to take it all at self-aggrandizing face value, presenting the Nazi mythology obsession as being this serious, scholarly, and portentous thing like Hitler and his cohorts wanted it to be. The modern dark fantasy trope of the evil Nazi science wizard achieving real important discovery in the fields of archaeology or mytho-history make for great bad guy plots in movies and comics and whatnot, but in doing so they obscure the fact that much like how the Third Reich was not actually all that efficient, or well-managed, or strategically confident, or even battlefield tough, but were mostly good at looking the part for a while, Hitler and his inner circle were, well, with the tacky aesthetic tastes, the boy versus world paranoia, and shared love of sitting around old castles, making up their own new cults and systems of government based on medieval fantasy and poorly reimagined prehistory, when you get right down to it, they were kind of a bunch of gigantic nerds! In fact, one of the reasons early public profiles of Hitler the politician didn't take him seriously until it was too late is that they recognized his personality as little more than an immature, daydreaming man-child, despite his military record and difficult youth. Many who reported on him at the time amusingly noted that his public speeches were precisely popular because he talked in the simple, one-dimensional language of a juvenile fiction hero about heroes and villains and good and evil in German history related to the rest of the world, and that as an adult his favorite books weren't necessarily grown-up literature, philosophy, even politics or history, but rather German youth adventure fiction aimed at young boys from his childhood, particularly the works of Karl May, a sort of German equivalent to James Fenimore Cooper or H. Rider Haggard, who wrote action-adventure tales for preteen boys that evinced classical old German values of duty and heroic idealism, but set among fantasy versions of American Indian society with names like Winnetou and Old Shatterhand. And of course there's his well-documented love for the music of Wagner, which reinvested Teutonic, Germanic, and Norse mythology with muscular blood and guts grandeur and stark good versus evil thematic simplicity in contrast with the romantic nuance popularized in mythic art and theatrical stagings of the post-Enlightenment era. This in turn carried over to the aesthetic preferences of those he chose to surround himself with in adulthood, leading to a Nazi leadership base that was simply lousy with fellow grown-up angry little boys like Himmler and especially Joseph Goebbels, the propaganda minister, nervous, socially disliked, emotionally immature bookworms with an uncomfortably familiar fixation on mythic power fantasies who railed against deconstructionist and social realist art and ultimately constructed the artistic, architectural, aesthetic, and literary identity of Nazism around a tacky vision of faux Roman neoclassicalism that, despite their claims to the contrary, owed a lot more to the completely fictional visions of the glorious past from juvenile boys' novels and pulp stories than Germany's own actual, supposedly forgotten history they claim to be representing.
Bang! Zoom! Straight to the moon.
That's not an astronaut, it's a TV comedian. And he was just using space travel as a metaphor for beating his wife.